The two-party system in America that we have today is a result of the Civil War. The Republican Party stood to abolish slavery, and the Democrat Party stood to abolish the Republic. For years after the Civil War, the Democrat Party created Ku Klux Klan, killed black political leaders, kidnapped heads of families, and leaders of churches and community groups. In 1870, John Stevens, a Republican state senator who advocated for the rights of African Americans, was murdered in the Caswell County Courthouse by the Ku Klux Klan as part of a terror campaign being carried out by the Democrat Party. By the end of the century, the Democrat Party helped foster several radical left pro-communist groups, such as the National Labor Union, the Revolutionary Socialist Labor Party, and the Social Democratic Party. In the 1900s, the Democrat Party's new radical left began killing members of law enforcement and government officials in several major U.S. cities, which culminated in 1920 when U.S. Attorney General Alexander Mitchell Palmer ordered a series of raids that targeted these leftist organizations. By the 1940s, the Democrat Party had to go underground with their communist plans to overthrow America. But this did not last long. The leftist media soon labeled this pro-American movement as McCarthyism and portrayed it as un-American. During the early 1970s, with the support of pop culture media, the Democrat Party's Weather Underground started riots, murdered police, and bombed government buildings, including the United States Capitol building. And today, the Democrat Party's anti-American communist crusade has grown into an unstoppable force with the support of Hollywood, the big banks, corporations, and private think tanks, as well as the majority of the Republican Party. Today, the Democrat Party's radical BLM and Antifa are able to murder Americans in cold blood and burn down cities, while law enforcement defends them and the average American supports them. What we are witnessing today is the final act of the destruction of individual liberty, natural law, and the Bill of Rights. And what follows will be a tyranny unlike anything we have ever seen in recorded history, because the average American no longer cares about freedom. Today's liberal Democrats are all on board with illegal wars for profit, imprisoning their opposition, and exploiting the most innocent among us, our children. The American people have become fat, drunk, and stupid, with swollen egos incapable of seeing even the most minute flaw in their own character. The American people have become so dumbed down that all the enemy has to do is lie. And no matter how radical the lie is, they will believe it. Some of us would gladly die for freedom. Thousands already have. But unfortunately, most of us will do nothing but comply. The biggest cowards in all of human history can be found today in America, because with only the slightest bit of courage, we could turn this all around. China has recently invited Indonesia, Malaysia, Iran, Egypt, and several other countries to join BRICS, a growing world alliance led by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. While some are reporting that BRICS is somehow challenging the globalists, this is demonstrably false. The original concept for BRICS was proposed by the chief economist for Goldman Sachs. BRICS's new development bank is staffed by known players of the IMF and World Bank, and BRICS has repeatedly affirmed their commitment to the United Nations Agenda 2030. Aside from Brazil's President Bolsonaro, all of BRICS nation-states have pushed the COVID-19 lockdowns and experimental shots, and China recently announced 5 more years of their brutal zero-COVID lockdowns. BRICS is also pushing a digital currency and has launched a vaccine research and development center for member states. BRICS is clearly not anti-globalist. Even the CCP's state-run media explains how BRICS now leads the globalization mission. But they are all turning against the United States and its allies. Xi Jinping accused the U.S. of weaponizing the financial system with their sanctions against Russia, which has caused the average person to suffer worldwide. And Vladimir Putin suggested that BRICS could provide a new world reserve currency. At the recent St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, Putin blamed the West for disrupting the international economy and announced that NATO's unipolar world order is over. In just 3 months, Russia has managed to reverse inflation and has increased their financial surplus to more than 4 times it was last year. Russia is now thriving, and Putin announced that their international priority is to increase food deliveries to countries that need it the most. They are pouring billions into their farming communities, raised the minimum wage by 10%, and provided more money to pensioners and families with children. He also criticized the West for choosing an economic suicidal path and having suicidal intentions, which seems to be the only explanation for what the Biden administration is doing. They have deliberately cut off our fuel, which will cut off our food, and they are pushing the deadly shots for every single healthy child in America. They have opened our borders and are pushing for a world war with a thriving nuclear power, while destroying our military from within. The Biden administration's plan is clear: destroy America from within. And they have amassed an army of the miserable through mass psychosis, an army of ugly, insane, sexually obsessed deviants who want abortion on demand and acceptance for pedophiles. Psychotics who castrate their own children because it's trendy, and mindless drones who believe the human race needs to die. At what point will Americans begin to care enough to work together and do something? When the nuclear bombs start falling? America is being mass murdered by our own federal government, and the emerging new globalized economy will let it happen. Unless Americans take back control of their own government, America will soon end. That's the plan being executed right now. For InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.